Hello everyone, good morning, thanks for coming in at 9 a.m. My name is John Manoogian III. I go by JM3, which is my username because I have a long name. I graduated University of Michigan in 1999. I did a program called the Independent Concentration Program, which means you kind of make a hybrid degree out of different programs, so I didn't belong to any one school. I grew up in Michigan as well. I moved here about 5 years ago. I'm currently the CTO of a startup called 140 Proof, which is a social advertising company. It uses social data from Twitter and Facebook, and done about 5 startups as well. So I'll echo a little bit of what Sam said. There's a whole pile of books and articles about these successful founders, everybody from Steve Jobs to Mark Zuckerberg, and all those stories leave out the luck, and they leave out all the mistakes and all the messy bits, so you can read those things and think, oh my God, these guys had it all figured out, and this is, you know, what I'm doing is not as clear as that. Like, I would just ignore all those stories. I would just, like, not even look at that stuff. Some people call it success porn. Like, just don't even get pulled into that. It's not really useful.
I've heard that. I like that.
And I'll share 1 or 2 lessons and strategies that I've picked up that have helped me a lot. I didn't have a deliberate path to this either. I didn't want to do this as a kid. I didn't have it all figured out. I worked as a technology director at an ad agency in Michigan called Organic, which some of you may have heard of. One of the lessons I learned from University of Michigan is being in that independent concentration program meant I didn't belong to any department, any school. So if I wanted to take a high-level CS class or an animation class or a linguistics class, I always had the last place slot behind the people in the department and all the seniors and the older kids. And so I had to convince every semester all my teachers to let me in. I had to sell myself into these classes and be like, I'll work harder than those kids, I'll do all the work, I'll help the other people. Like, that senior who needs this class to graduate, he's not even as serious as I am. And just that practice of kind of like forcing those doors open again and again to professors who really, they didn't know who I was, they didn't care who I was, that lesson translated over very well when it came time to raise money or to hire an engineer away from a company that like had a way better business model than ours and had more money. To be able to kind of convince people and pull them in was super valuable. The other lesson that I think I learned out here, and my co-founder has had to like beat into me repeatedly, is that, and this sounds a little weird out of context, but I think originality can be a little bit overvalued when you think about entrepreneurship and starting a company. I was taught as a coder and a designer that you wanted to do things very differently and everything had to be very novel, and you should always be different than the competition in every way. And I think you can actually waste a lot of time trying to innovate in areas where you may not need to innovate. The fact that someone else is already doing a business very similar to yours should not discourage you. That should simply validate your idea that, hey, maybe there's some money in this market. So I would say don't get too hung up on whether you have the most original idea in the world. You might be surprised that, that's not really what matters the most.
Don't feel like you have to work it all out in advance. Like, art of being an entrepreneur is diving in and just kind of making it work as you go along. I think that's the big thing that I would say.
And I think one thing to do with that advice is almost, it's kind of counterintuitive, but this is a strategy that I've used again and again. So you might say, okay, this guy says I don't need to be totally ready. What do I do? What's my first step? Do I need to raise money? Do I need to write code? Do I need to like design a web page? And sometimes you're not sure. And you're looking for somebody who has more experience, right? Like there's people up here on a panel and you're like, oh, maybe those guys can give me the answers. One of the things that I highly recommend as a strategy, which seems counterintuitive, is when you're looking for help, when you're looking for answers, you're not sure what to do next, often what you should be doing is volunteering your own help with someone that you would like to work with, somebody who seems like they know what they're doing, somebody who either has a business or seems to know where they're going or is working in a space that's interesting to you, is volunteer to help them. That might be that you file a bug with like really good, clear repro steps so that they can fix it. It might be that you give them a suggestion. It might be that you volunteer to help them with a deck or a strategy, whatever it might be. But the idea is when you can volunteer that help, when you can connect to somebody else, you're going to make yourself so valuable to them that you're going to learn all sorts of free lessons. And my experience is it always pays off like tenfold back to you. I'll give you like a random example that happened to me. My background is code and specifically web apps, writing software that runs on the web. And I had a good friend of mine who was a mobile application developer writing low-level C code to write native apps. He didn't know web programming. He didn't know HTML, CSS, and stuff like that. And he was asking me all these questions over Instant Messenger of how to make his webpage not look horrible, because if you don't know CSS, it's like sort of unintuitive and weird. And I wrote a list for him. I was like, these are the 10 things you need to know about CSS, because I know this stuff, and here you go. And after I wrote him this email, I was like, this is a handy list. I should just blog it, because I don't want to have to go write this list again the next time somebody asks me how to do CSS. So I blogged it. That blog post got submitted to dig.com. It got like 3,000 gigs from people who said, oh, this is super valuable, this is a good resource of how to learn CSS. The next day, I was talking to a startup who I was interested in working with, and they Google my name, and what comes up but like, this guy is the foremost expert on the homepage of Dig, invented CSS, whatever. All because I just said, hey, I can help this guy. It's silly that he doesn't have the answers. I'll just do it for him, and I'll share that.
I think if there's one thing I wish I'd known 20 years ago, that's it, actually.
Yeah.
It's culture. Yeah.
It's super weird. And honestly, to be direct, like Doug is one of the guys that I sort of got that from. When I was at University of Michigan, he was somebody who was connected to so many people, and he was very big about giving other people opportunities, and he helped me out and gave me opportunities. And I said, well, the only right thing to do is I need to pay that back. I need to help other people out. And it's paid off so many times. So I would say if you're ever going, I know I want to do a startup, I want to build an app, I want to start a business, I don't know what to do, literally start helping people, and you'll find like all these ideas and resources start coming to you.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. Like I've had very similar experiences. I did more recently a road trip across the country, and my projects, they're not necessarily aimed towards money.
I think one thing that's really important to realize is it's not a binary choice between going to work at GM and like starting this whole new Facebook thing on your own in your garage. There's a whole gradient in between. You could join another startup, you don't have to fund it. You could join a company that cares about technology. That's what I did. It wasn't even a tech company, but it had a strong understanding of why technology and open source mattered. And you can learn a heck of a lot just from joining another company or joining a startup and acting entrepreneurially. Even inside of a bigger corporation, you can still be a tiger team, you can still break the rules, make your own product, run it like a business, and learn a lot of those lessons, which is what I did. I didn't actually go quit my cush job, move to San Francisco, and start a startup by myself, actually with 2 other people, and then have those people abandon me when I was 19. I actually did it after working in a company for a couple years and learning what my skills were and what my sweet spot was. I would just say, though, that there are so many more resources now than we had then that I think it's a lot easier to see what you're comfortable with, to start experimenting with development, iteration, putting an app out there, open source, that you don't actually need maybe quite so long at a bigger company. I think you can make that transition a little sooner.
That's true. The other thing is, it's not. This isn't Japan, right? Like you don't have to go. You don't have one shot at having a big corporate job. You can, it looks great actually if you popped out of college and did a year or 2 of your own, got some experience on your own doing your own business or working with a startup. It's not, it's not a bad thing to go do that. So
totally,
it's also not binary in the sense of, this isn't the only point in your life when you can go get that kind of job. You can definitely.
John, what made you decide to join the city? Was that something that the tech team there was so talented, or was it something that
Did you plant this? Did you plant this guy? Oh, really? Funny. So I guess you Googled me or something. That's hilarious. So that was the story that I told about the CSS blog post, and what was clear to me was they had all the factors for success lined up in an array. They had somebody who had sold their previous business for $250 million with a B. They had raised a bunch of money. They had a cool market. They had an innovative idea that was going to make money from the start. There's a ton of apps and businesses that you guys know about and use that there's no way they're going to make money. Like, it's an amazing app. It's super cool. There's just no way to get dollars out of it. They had all that figured out. But what they really didn't understand, and they knew this, was they didn't have someone who really built consumer products, who built consumer things for the web. And when I looked at what they were doing and what they wanted in a founding member to join, there was a fit, because I was like, the stuff I'm really good at, they can't do. This is perfect. I can sort of be a king here because I can be great at the stuff that they're terrible at, and vice versa. They knew all the things that I didn't. And so I ended up joining that team very early on. And a lot of the core people from that original team are still working with me today at different startups. I think to Sam's point, he said something like 5 of the startups were with the same team. And 4 of the ones that I did were with people that I connected with through that startup. So those were kind of the factors of why I was interested in it. And it was very fortuitous for me to have met those people. What I ended up doing was nothing to do with that business or that business model, but it taught me a lot about subscription-based models, which are very, just as like a random aside, you hear about like different business models, freemium, advertising, things like this. The idea of like charging someone money for a service sounds really simple, but not a lot of apps are doing it. And so to see that business model sort of succeed was inspiring and led to a lot of other things. Does that answer your question? I think it's a small town, relatively speaking, and there are a lot of connections and a lot of ways to meet people. For me, I think one of the ways I got connected to those folks was through the meetup community, going to different meetups. So especially in San Francisco in the Valley, there's a system of tech meetups that are totally free. Anybody can roll in, be completely clueless, and learn stuff. It's awesome. And so I think it was probably through one of the meetups that I was going to at the time.
In our world, Umich has been with 2,000 members and
right.
5 startups every month.
And that's like on the topic of sort of like helping aggressively and maybe teaching a little bit before you're ready. Like that's a great example is volunteering to present at one of these meetups. Just going in and saying, hey, this is what I'm working on. Here's my project. I may not have figured it all out yet, but I want to tell people about it and share that. It's a great experience. It gives you a lot more confidence and it helps connect you with people. So I would highly recommend doing stuff like that. And because neither of these 2 gentlemen explicitly said it, I'll just be the one who does. Because I want you guys to succeed, you should seriously consider moving here.
I was trying to be more...
Doug can't say that for a lot of reasons. And I think those of you who, you have a home and a life in Michigan, that's awesome, and you should do that. But those of you who are saying, I want to have as many advantages on my side as possible, you should seriously consider being in the Bay Area. So take that for what it's worth. Yes.
Because everyone's here.
Because everyone's here, the money is here, the technology is here, and the community is here.
The network effects are
huge. You can't do that in Detroit or in Ann Arbor in the same way, and you're talking to a guy who lived there for 30 years. So
if you want to go after, you go to
yeah, like there's just friction. Like if you want to take a meeting with somebody, they're here, right? And if you're not here, it's like a big deal to take that meeting or set up a phone call or whatever. Whereas if they're just down the road, you just jump in your car and you see them.
Are there advantages to being a bigger fish in a small pond?
Yes, there are, but I would say the difference is as dramatic as saying, I don't need to go to college or University of Michigan. I can just teach myself everything. You can. That is technically true. You can also do a startup in Michigan and succeed. Like, there are examples of that. My argument would be they're more the exception that prove the rule. No doubt. But I would rather have as many advantages as possible if I'm starting a business. And I'll give one sort of recommendation to sort of end the debate of like here or there is, on the internet, like nobody knows where you are, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be your identity that you're in Detroit or Ann Arbor or you're in the Bay Area. Just be on the internet. If we're talking about technology startups, most of you are talking and hopefully thinking about the internet. 37 Signals in Chicago invented Rails. You may have heard of it. Their whole philosophy is it doesn't matter where you are. They're all over. They're a distributed team. Yeah, feel free to take that approach and work with the people that you care about, that you're going to connect with online. And it doesn't matter what zip code they're in or what area code you're in. Like, don't feel like you need to get hung up on that. And then there's like a team affiliation of like us or them.
But you have to be able to execute like
yeah.
that, right? They executed really well.
My point is that does it matter where they are? Like, did any of you guys know where they were? Did it matter where they were when they checked in code? It didn't really matter. On that note, I should actually say, when I went to U of M about a month ago for the entrepreneurial recruiting event, I was appalled to see how many CS kids and programmers did not have GitHub accounts. So my homework assignment for anybody in here who writes code is you should go make a GitHub account. That is how you will find other hackers if you're an entrepreneur. That is how other businesses and startups will find you. It's free. You should just have it and do it. So like, do it today. Make a GitHub account, pick a username, and put some code in there. Trust me, it's a good community to be in, and it's changing the way software is made all over the world, no matter what city you're in. Nice.
Also, apparently to be an entrepreneur, you have to have a black notebook.
Yeah. You didn't get the, yeah.
I thought that was a very nice, concise